Good evening, guys. Welcome to the Texas Prisons Transparency Project, episode number 4. Tonight, we're going to talk about all the heat-related issues going on with the winter storm. Shannon's going to answer some questions about how inmates deal with the weather on the inside when it's cold and when it's hot, and touch on some SEG issues. And if we have time, get into reentry and reintegration. First off, I want to share with you guys the emails I sent over the week. Tanya Obella and I spent 4 days contacting units of reports that we've gotten. And just so I'm clear on something, we do not contact every unit we get a report on. We make sure we vet the information. And usually it takes more than 3 to 4 reports of the same units and same dorms before we jump on it. So I'm going to share the list with you guys. The following emails were not answered. The second round of emails to Polensky today in regards to the blankets being taken away. The Ellis unit, J building. Estelle, no match or blankets. However, I do know that that was remedied. Clements needs blankets. They have windows in the day room open. They are still cold. Murray, no heat. I believe that was also fixed. Roach was fixed. Terrell, I have not heard from. Cofield, I have not heard from. Luther was fixed. Plain, fixed. Formby, no heat in the admin area. That was fixed. Hughes, individuals without blankets, I believe that was fixed, but I have not confirmed that. Jordan, no hot water or blankets in the G4 units. Still have not heard from them. The following were answered and remedied. Torres unit, no hot water in the J3 wing. Polensky, no hot water, working toilets or urinals. Believe that was fixed, y'all. Briscoe, no heat in building 5. McConnell, no heat in unit C pod restrictive housing. Stevenson, no heat in the C wing. Sale, no heat dorms 4 and 5. Telford, no heat in building 8. Lynchner, no blankets. Middleton, no heat in the 3 building. East Texas Treatment Facility, no heat. Lindsay, no heat in pod F. Crane, no heat. Connolly, no heat in building 8. All of those have been remedied. All right, with that being said, I want to thank Angela Chevalier and Daniel Dickerson. You guys have been amazing this week helping us get these things fixed. I ask the people to please bear with this agency. It's large. It's huge. They are short of staff. They're doing what they can. Connolly has some serious issues going on with water. It involves the city. They can't help that. They're going to do what they can. With all that being said, pray for everybody through this next 24 hours with the snow, especially up north, because it might get ugly. If you have problems, please let me or Tanya know. Tanya Obella will help you out. Just don't blow us up with some stuff that we can't vet, because we're not going to call the agency without good cause. Now, with that said, I'm going to let Shannon explain to you guys what they go through on the inside.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everybody. Nice to see y'all all again. I see y'all over there in the comments. Thank you very much. On the inside, the weather in Texas, it always seems to be one extreme or another. You know, the brief spring and autumn seasons are all too brief here in Texas, right? So in the summer we burn and in the winter we freeze. And, you know, as many of you know, prison is all concrete and metal. So it holds the heat and it holds the cold. And it intensifies it. Often, whatever the temperature is outside, it's worse on the inside for heat or cold. It just like all that concrete and metal just radiates that stuff inside and holds on to it. Like in the summertime, the concrete soaks in the heat all day long. And even after the sun goes down, it's burning hot in the cell till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes in the middle of summer, right? You don't get no relief till about 2 a.m. But right now in the wintertime, especially with the severe weather coming in, you know, on most units I've been on, they only pass out 1 blanket. You know, units that are further up north, they issue 2 blankets due to the colder temperatures. But even then, you know, I mean, it's only so much and it only goes so far. You know, the heaters on the inside, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think more often than not, they do work. Like, we don't have no air conditioner for sure, but they have a heater, okay? However you make sense out of that. But, you know, but again, even the heater is a bit of a mixed blessing. in extreme conditions, yes, it'll keep you warm, it'll keep you alive. But at the same time, a lot of people hate the heater. Personally, I hated the heater myself because, again, it's always one extreme or another. It's either not on and it's frozen in there, or it's cranked up so high that even though it's snowing outside, you're in there sweating. It's bad one way or the other. And so what we often do is people that don't like the heat, they'll use paper or cardboard and they will block their vents off, saying, to keep the heat from coming in. But that doesn't prevent the heat from going to anybody else's cell. On the contrary, what it actually does, by blocking your vent, you force all the air to blow harder into the other cells that are connected to that air duct, right? And the heater, for a lot of people, I don't even have sinus problems personally, but when they turn that heater on the inside, I get so congested, it just stops up all my sinuses and I end up getting a headache, and it's kind of a horrible experience, kind of I don't know, danged if you do, danged if you don't type of scenario almost, right? So, that's just, I don't know. We just learn to deal with it. A lot of people will say that they'd rather be cold than hot because it's easier to bundle up in a bunch of clothing, put on all your clothes and put your jacket on and wrap your blanket around you like a poncho. And, you can get by. Might not be very comfortable, but you can get by. And in the summertime, it's so bad. I mean, you can only take off so much, right? And then, we wet ourselves down with water and sit in front of the fan and, every trick in the book. It really just teaches you how to survive. One way or another, you have to survive. And for most people, as long as they're healthy, we're going to survive. Well, one way or another, whether we're comfortable or not, we're going to make it. Prison gives you a survivor's mentality. Survive at all costs, against all odds, whatever the case may be. If this is what we got to do, then this is what we got to do. Buckle down and just take care of your business, right? But there's also a large portion of the population that has a lot of health problems, and a lot of the older population, which it's not so easy for them. It's actually much harder, and I get that. I understand that. And there's just not a lot of solutions for it. These older guys, man, they get cold more easy. If they have certain medical conditions, it makes them like intrinsically cold, and man, it's bad on them. It's terrible. And, it sucks to see them like miserable, really, miserable, and sometimes miserable to the point that like they're in pain, but again, there's only so much that we can do on the inside to keep warm. We, like I say, we can bundle up and, it just, I don't know. There's not much else to do.
Any words of advice for these family members to tell their loved ones inside on how to deal with this? Because we've had issues with people complaining about broken windows or windows in the day rooms that can't be closed except for the outside. What can they tell you immediately? Because I still have units that, like I said, aren't responding. Not many, but there are some.
Okay. Well, windows are like this. They're different on different units. The cell windows first. On different units, like what we call red brick units, which are the older type of units. You don't have windows inside the cell. You have windows, you have bars on your cell door, and then a runway, and then the windows are on the other side, facing your cell. So your cell is looking outside the windows. But in those, especially like Cofield is a prime example. They nicknamed Cofield the glass house because they got so many glass windows like that. And in the summer heat, inmates will break those windows, just to get a little more breeze in there. And what they do year after year, they've been doing it for decades, is that they'll leave those windows broken when winter comes around. About halfway through winter, they'll get around to fixing them. But they're going to punish you for that first half of winter just for breaking the windows out. And this happens year after year after year, and I'm sure it's like that on a lot of other red brick units that have those type of windows as well. There ain't really nothing you can do about that, not from the inside.
So during the summertime, were the heat directives followed during the extreme heat? Like, did you guys get respite as much as you asked for?
Sometimes. I was on the Stevenson unit, and they were good about respite. They, that's generally a pretty good unit as far as prison goes. However, I spent my last 8 months on the Torres unit, aka the terrible Torres, right?
Right.
And they didn't offer. I never heard of them offering respite in GP. They offered it to medium custody, because medium custody would get so rowdy and raise so much hell. But
Right.
and they allowed them to go into the medical department or into the back of their little small seg day room they got, and they would get air conditioning back there for however long at a time, 30-minute segments or something like that. But they never offered it to general population, so it's touch and go. It depends on where you're at, but yeah, so you just never know there. But the day room windows on a lot of units, well, again, let me address the different styles of units. Maximum security units, which are not red bricks, but they're known or dubbed as 2250s.
Right.
Those type of units like Michaels and French Robertson and such. The windows in the cells over there, they're only about 3 inches tall and they're 3 foot long, and they have a turn dial to open and close them, and they only open and close about 3 or 4 inches, and that's it. So whether it's, plenty of them are broken, either stuck in an open position or a closed position. And in the wintertime, it's not that big of a deal to, if the wind's coming in through the window, it's pretty easy to block your window. It's 3 inches tall and 3 foot long. You can use something to put in there and block the wind from coming in the window. On units that are built like Stevenson and Torres, however, these are minimum security units. They actually have a big square window that actually slides up and down. Never thought I'd be on a unit like that, but I actually ended up on 2 of them. Right. But, those windows are a blessing and a curse. It's a big window, gives you a big view, for what it's worth. It's got bars on it also, but, it's still a blessing on the inside to have that. And, if your window's broke, and a lot of those on Torres unit, a lot of those windows are broken, like bad, completely off the tracks and everything. They're bigger, so they're harder to block, and you can still block it easily enough, but you got to use something. You're either going to use your blanket or your jacket for the most part. And if you're using that to block the window, then you can't use that to keep your body heat in, right?
Right.
So, it's a trade-off, but it's worth blocking the window. That's going to do you more good than wearing it on your body. You have to make that sacrifice in those situations. But so there's those type of windows on those type of units. Day room windows on big units, they are designed to where in most cases you are supposed to be able to open and close them from the inside, but a lot of them are broke. They're stuck. They're rusted, weather's gotten to them, whatever the case may be, and they're stuck in one position or another. And in order to unstick them, some officer has to go outside, and physically close the window. And they might need a ladder or a lift to get to the window, depending on where it's at. And like you already said, they're chronically shorthanded. They don't got nobody that wants to do this, for one, and then it's cold and they don't want to go out in the weather either. It's raining, right. It's snowing. They should have done it beforehand, right? You would think preventative maintenance, but so often as is the case, people don't really think ahead like that to all the practicalities. We used to say TDCJ for the most part seems to be allergic to logic, but
they are reactive, not proactive. That's for sure.
Something like that. Yeah.
Now explain to them how you know all this. Didn't you work in maintenance?
Yes, I actually did work in maintenance for almost a decade. I was an office clerk in there, so I wrote all the work orders for the entire unit. I'm familiar with everything that goes on all the different moving bits and pieces. I also worked 1020, which is a general maintenance job, which does a little bit of everything. I worked that, and I worked in a boiler room for a little over 2 years. So, a boiler room, I'm not sure. I had a conversation about this earlier with somebody, and I'm not sure about on red brick units, but on 2250s and smaller units like Stevenson and Torres and such, boiler rooms only supply steam and hot water to the kitchen and the laundry and whatever other little small offices are in that building, usually called D building. But they provide to those only. Those don't go to the buildings. They don't have nothing to do with the buildings. And the
Right.
buildings are supposed to have their own water heaters in the attic, and they do, on those type of units. Like I said, I'm just not sure how that works on a red brick unit, but I'm pretty sure that the boiler room does not supply steam and hot water to the entire unit. It's just that those boilers aren't that big. They're not designed for that.
Right. So can you explain to us the difference between these issues in GP and these issues in SEG?
Unfortunately, I can.
Right.
Because, in my 25 years that I spent incarcerated in TDCJ, I've pretty much been everywhere, from the bottom to the top. And I started out at the bottom, which is probably kind of typical. I came in the door at 18 years old. I had a big sentence hanging on me, a 35-year sentence. And, there wasn't no light at the end of the tunnel. So I came in and I immediately, within the first few months, I got, these days they call it G forward. Back then it was just called medium custody. I got placed on medium custody. And for my first 10 years in prison, I was never in GP. I was never in minimum custody. My first 10 years I spent on medium custody, closed custody, and in administrative segregation. I did my seg time. They call it administrative segregation. Most places would call it solitary confinement, because they're like synonymous. I don't see any difference in them. I did mine on the French Robertson unit, the year 2000 to 2010. Right. I spent a little over 8 years in administrative segregation. And that's a Pandora's box. But to begin with heating and cooling issues in SEG, on those type of units like French Robertson, what they call 2250s. I don't know why they call them 2250s, because technically they're 3,000 man units, but they're dubbed 2250s. And on those units, SEG is actually air conditioned. One of the few places in TDCJ that is actually air conditioned, right? But that's not the blessing that it at first appears to be, because like all things in TDCJ, and for the most part in Texas, I guess, it's a matter of extremes, and they keep you frozen like a popsicle back there year round. And then it sucked. Again, I would use cardboard or something to block off my vent. Everybody does, because it's too cold. It's miserable. It's miserable back there. Even in the summertime, they got it freezing in there, but that's just what it is. And we deal with it. They do have heat also in SEG. And again, a matter of extremes. It's either too hot or too cold. There's never a middle ground, and so it doesn't do a lot of good to complain about it. We learn to work around it by blocking the vents and learning how to, stay warm in the winter and stay cool in the summer. We just have to learn to survive.
Are you sure that all SEGs have heat and AC, every unit?
Red brick units do not. That's different. Okay. Red brick units are primitive. Those were like the first units built in Texas. They are old. Most of them are dating from the 80s or before, right? And those units, no, those units are just a concrete box with bars across the front of it. That's all that is. And on the vast majority of red brick units, you can literally reach out both of your arms and touch both the walls in the cell. That's how small the cell is. And there's 2 men in there. And sometimes they're 2 big guys, 300-pound men, in a cell like that. One man actually has to sit down on the bunk just so the other man can pass by and go to the front or the back of the cell. That's how the red
says that Cofield definitely does not have AC.
No, Cofield's an old unit. Cofield's something of an anomaly. It's the biggest unit in the state of Texas, 5,000 men. And it's like a little city. And it's not a typical red brick unit, and it's not a 2250. It's kind of got its own design. It's really a strange design, but it's more akin to a red brick unit than not. We on Cofield, they do showers at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's your only opportunity to go shower. If you have a job, you might get to shower after work. But if you don't have a specific type of job, 5 a.m. and it's cold, like I said, glass house, plenty of windows are broke out. You're freezing on the way to the shower, and you get to the shower and the water's cold.
Right.
And it sucks. And they, of course they got the big public showers over there. There'd be 50, 70, 80 men in there showering together, all open space. And yeah, it's cold and it's miserable and it's 5 a.m. And yeah, and
So
then
what do we want to
even if you
say?
go to recreation.
What do you want to
Yeah.
say to these shed guys that are stuck back there? A lot of them right now.
Oh man,
Connell is freezing right now.
more than anything, man, you need to get out of SEG. There's nothing happening back there. I don't care if you're an active gang member. I don't care what you got going on, man. It's just not worth it. I spent 8.5 years in SEG for being a confirmed gang member, and none of it was worth it. We grow up with these ideals and these ideas of what's cool and what we want to be a part of and affiliated with, and we have these fairy tale concepts in our mind, and none of it's real. None of it's really real, man. We pride ourselves on loyalty, and loyalty is actually a beautiful virtue, but loyalty cuts both ways. We're loyal to things that aren't loyal to us, and that never works out for the good. We end up doing ourselves more harm in the long run than if we just cut ties. If loyalty is not a two-way street, then loyalty is not legit. You don't owe any obligation to something that is not returned to you, in full, 50-50, meet me in the middle or something. And gang life is just not like that. You may meet good individuals here and there, but overall, they're not going anywhere. The organization, so to speak, it ain't going anywhere. It's not doing anything good, So at some point, you just got to say enough is enough, and the longer you spend in SEG, whether you realize it or not, the more problems you're going to have mentally in your life, because one of the only things that I feared going into prison as an 18-year-old with a fresh 35-year sentence hanging on me is, man, I did not want to become institutionalized, and for the entire 25 years that I did, I was consciously aware and tried to consciously guard against becoming institutionalized. Right. And even then, there's always going to be small little quirks and such, that it's almost impossible not to be. But personally, I believe I avoided most of the big stuff. But man, SEG is the worst of the worst. Anybody that does more than a year or two in administrative segregation, I watched it myself over and over again. I guesstimate at least 85%, maybe more, but at least 85% of people back there that do more than a year or two, it breaks them. It mentally breaks people back there to one degree or another. Some people are just slightly what we call throwed off, is the term that's most often bandied about. They're a little bit throwed off, just kind of strange, got strange little quirks and such about them, mannerisms or whatnot, all the way to just being, flat out, insane. They lose their mind completely. They
don't go in that way, though, do they?
No, the vast majority of them do not. SEG does that to you. When your mind is trapped in a concrete box, a minimum of 23 hours a day, often 24 hours a day, because you're supposed to get 1 hour of rec a day and a shower. Supposed to. Oftentimes that doesn't happen.
We have a correctional officer in the comments, CJ. He's saying that he works in SEG, and it's crazy to see what happens to people's mental health back there. What can we do to prevent it? How can you prevent it?
I don't know if there's a way. It requires more human interaction. You don't have enough human social interaction. Humans are social animals, and we require a degree of human interaction in our life, and it's so easy back there to become antisocial because you start to look around, you like, man, these people are crazy, or they're throwed off, or these people are dope fiends, and that person's just a hardcore gangbanger. And it's easy to like, man, I don't really want anything to do with any of these guys right here, man. So you begin to isolate. You're already isolated, but you begin to isolate more and more, and it becomes a mental thing, and there was a point in my life where I became so antisocial, and I didn't even realize it while it was happening, while it was going on. Probably for about a year of my life, I hardly spoke to anybody at all. And I didn't really realize what was happening, until one day They moved a guy in next door to me as my neighbor, and I could see it. He was on the side of my door. We got about a 1-inch slit in the side of the door where you can look out and you can see each other, looking at each other through the little crack of the door, right? And we ended up having a conversation that lasted probably about 10 hours, right? Just ranging all over the place, right? And we chopped it up, man. And that one conversation, not even yelling or screaming. This is my neighbor. He's probably about 5 feet away. And I woke up the next morning and I did not have no voice at all whatsoever. I'm not talking about, I wasn't hoarse. I didn't have a sore throat. I had no voice. I couldn't make a sound. I lost my voice just from having one conversation because I went so long without using it. And that's when I realized, like, oh my God, man, what's going on, dude? What are you doing? And
right, yeah.
I realized whether I like it or not, I needed to start talking. I needed to start speaking. I needed interaction in my life, But
All right,
it's not that easy.
here. You see these questions? Can you see them?
Yes, SEG. I mean, it's basically solitary confinement. Yes, it is solitary confinement. I don't see any difference at all.
All right. Ken asks, did you realize for sure that you were for sure heading for AdSeg when you joined a gang, or was it a surprise? Did you think that you would slide by and not be confirmed?
I think I did. I think I didn't really consider going to SEG. When it happened, I didn't really care that much because, to be honest, I was so callous at that point in my life that I really didn't care about much. That's another thing. While I was in SEG, something else happened to me. Probably the single biggest turning point in my entire life. There's a common statement or sentiment that you hear people say in prison, and it's usually in regards to their mother. They usually, say something along the lines of, man, I don't know what I would do if my mama dies while I'm in here, man. I'll go crazy, right? That's a common sentiment in prison, and it's, verbalized quite often. Personally, I never said such a thing. My father raised me, and he was a good dad, far from perfect, but a good dad. And, that was the most important person in my life. I'm an only child and all that. And man, so that he was that person for me. And man, one day I got a knock on the door, hey, chaplain wants to see you. And automatically there's only one reason the chaplain would be calling me. He ain't never spoke to me before. He doesn't walk the runs back there or anything like that, and so I went down there, they shackled me down. I'm in SEG. So they open the little slot on the door and you got to stick your hands behind your back and shove them out the hole. And they handcuff you before they'll ever open the door. Then they open the door and they put the shackles on your legs and sometimes run the chain from your wrist to your ankles. It just depends, but you're shackled down and there's supposed to be 2 officers that escort you anytime they pull you out the cell. Sometimes there's only one because they're chronically shorthanded, right? But it's supposed to be 2. They took me down there. I got the call and they said they found my dad passed out dead on the bathroom floor at 3:00 in the morning from what they politely call heart failure. That's what pills and alcohol, that's what it'll do to your heart. Muscle relaxers. Yeah. The heart is a muscle.
Do you think post-incarceration syndrome is a very real thing? I mean, I believe 100% it is.
Yes. But what I realized then, because I took that phone call and they brought me back to my cell, and my mentality is never show weakness, even regardless of how you feel, never show anybody your vulnerabilities. That's another way that place conditions you, right? So that I wait till I get back to my cell and they unshackle me and they lock the door and they burn off. And man, I sit on my bunk and I'm just kind of waiting for it just to hit me, just to come crashing down on me. And man, it really didn't. After 5-10 minutes, man, I'm like, I start to get mad, right? I'm like, man, because anger's easy. Anger's usually our first defensive mechanism. Anger makes you feel strong, right? We don't want to feel vulnerable. We want to feel strong. So I get mad and I'm thinking, man, what's wrong with you, man? You can't even shed a tear for your old man. What, man, what are you doing, bro? What are you becoming? What are you doing to yourself? And I'm glad for the first time in my life, I asked myself these questions, and it made me take a look at myself and become self-aware. And what I realized is that from the age of at least 13, if not 12 or so, at least 13 on up, I've been trying to live this lifestyle, trying to mold myself into this gangster and this hardcore dude and all this and that, right? And man, I had been callousing myself. And, as tragic as it is, man, at the age of 21, I realized that I was like almost emotionally dead.
Right.
I couldn't really feel anything. Like I said, aside from anger, and anger's easy, but that's another thing that the lifestyle does to us. But anyway, I realized that, and I knew that I needed to turn it around. And just like it took years to build all those calluses and walls up, it took me years to tear them down. But that's another thing that SEG is going to reinforce. SEG reinforces every condition that you have. Another big mental problem in SEG is paranoid schizophrenia. People start believing that everybody's talking about them, that they're plotting against them, and you'll hear guys yelling from one section to 2 or 3 whole sections across the way, like, I hear y'all over there talking about me and stuff like that, man. And
Right.
ain't nobody talking about you, bro. But it's bad. Some guys, there's a lot of guys that cut on themselves back there. And I don't really understand it myself, but it's just part of that mental psychosis, man, that I don't know what they're trying to get out of it, but there's plenty of cutters in SEG. I've seen guys probably accidentally commit suicide and bleed out and get pulled out of the cell just in a literal puddle, a pool of blood. Just pull them out on the run, roll them onto a stretcher, a gurney, and haul them off.
So you think the suicide rate's higher in GP or back in SEG?
I would imagine SEG, though it might not be a big
like
difference.
Non-drug induced, at least. True.
No, I'm talking about voluntary suicide. I would think that it was higher in SEG, even though they've supposedly downsized SEG somewhat. What do you say? They still have at least 3,000 or 4,000 people in SEG these days, something like that.
I'm not sure exactly the number on it. I'd have to ask.
I think that's what I heard. I think it's still around 3,000 or so. They supposedly downsized. But
right.
I don't know. But SEG is a very terrible place, and I don't really see a cure for it.
Well, I was just about to ask you, how do you think, how can we bring some humanity back to SEG? How can the officers do that? How can the inmates do that?
Well, the 2 things I can think of that helped me a lot was getting mail, that's interaction. I would spend 4 or 5 hours writing one letter, and I probably never wrote a letter while I was back there that was less than 6 or 7 pages long.
Yeah, but we have it's all electronic now, and half of them don't have access to tablets, or they can't use their tablets, or, it's just, yeah.
Yes, it becomes more and more complicated, right? There's no simple fix.
Right.
But what helped me save my mentality, my mind, was mail and books. I got into reading books, and I love books. And like, one of the things that anybody that does any amount of time in prison, whether it's in SEG or GP, it doesn't matter, just in prison, in jail, right? Now you're going to experience depression. And the longer you do, the more familiar you're going to become with depression. I tend to jokingly refer to depression as like an old friend that just comes to visit every now and then, right? But the thing is, I learned to recognize the signs. There ain't nothing much that I could do about it when I get depressed. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel like interacting. I don't want to write. I don't want to work out. It's just like I don't want to do anything. It just takes away all my motivation to do anything. I don't want to do nothing. But what I would do, what worked for me personally, was I would read fiction books, just story books, and I get into whether they be fantasy novels, which usually I liked them because they come in series. It might be 3 books to 10 or 12 books long in an entire series. And as long as it was good, the more the merrier, the more the better, So, and that was my escapism. I would get into these worlds and these stories, and reading books was just like watching a movie to me. I'd see it all playing out in my mind, right? So books was a very, very big thing. If you have the ability, send your people books, and don't, try not to just send them random books, because some people aren't very picky, but a lot of people, they have a preference. I would rather read Western novels or fantasy novels, or maybe some people enjoy educational novels more. It just depends. But that's a big help and a relief. That gives a man a means of escapism, a way to get his mind out of these four walls. Yeah.
Well, we have somebody in the comments here. She knows who she is. She's a dear friend of mine. Her niece recently tried to commit suicide right before Christmas. And to this day, still, they took her tablet away, her belongings away, her commissary away as a punishment for attempting suicide. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. Why are we punishing people for mental health issues? I don't get it. I don't understand why the policy right now is to gas people that are trying to commit suicide instead of truly intervening. I mean, like, I've been a suicidal person, and I'm going to tell you right now, when I attempted to take my life, somebody came at me and it just made me want to do it faster. It's not going to stop me. So people panic and they really freak out, and it's just not okay. Why take their stuff away from them? That makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you completely. On the flip side, trying to look at it from TDCJ's perspective, attempting suicide is a rule violation. You're not supposed to do that. It causes a major disruption, and cause of an ICS and manpower, resources, and all this other stuff, right? So they look at it from that viewpoint. So you're causing all this trouble, regardless of the reason or what you got going on. You're causing all this trouble, so there's going to be consequences for that. That's going to be their perspective.
That's where mental health needs to be completely reevaluated, because there shouldn't be policy violations. That'd be like saying you have cancer or you've had a heart attack and you caused a commotion, so you have to go to SEG for it. That's stupid.
I completely agree. Only certain units have a mental health professional on the unit that actually works there every day, or at least Monday through Friday. Right. A lot of your smaller units, they don't. 2250s and on up, they have one on the unit at all, Monday through Friday, at least office hours. But those other units like Torres and Stevenson and units built like that, they don't have any psych doctors at all, ever. If you need to see a mental health professional, you have to catch the chain bus and go somewhere else for that, but just like people that are on those units, they're not on specific psych meds, that you can't get them on units like that. If you require psych medication, you have to be transferred to one of those units that has a psych doctor that actually works there.
So do field ministers and life coaches, is that program being utilized correctly, or should it be utilized more?
Actually, it should be utilized more. Right. But absolutely, they are a big help. I seen it like on my way out of prison, just in the process of getting released, they bounced me off of like 12 different units, right? 12 different units in like 12 days. Yeah, pretty much. And, spend a night here, a weekend there, this, that, and the other. I seen field ministers walk the runs on a lot of those units, and a lot of people interact with them and talk to them. On some of those units, the guys would, they had, I don't know if it was, what do you want to call it? Not really a policy, but one of the things they would do, if they passed by a cell and people were in there getting high, smoking K2 or doing whatever they were doing to get intoxicated, they would always stop and try to speak to those people. Even if in the vast majority of cases, those people didn't want to talk to them. They might cuss them out. They might try to spit on them. You just don't know. They might even try to assault them, and if they're too aggressive, then the field minister would just move on, go on about his business. But they made the attempt. I seen that with my own eyes, man, and I respect that a lot. Because you can't all you can ever do is your part. You can't do nobody else's part for them. You know what I'm saying? But
do you know when the field minister program started? Because I can't remember. I know
it doesn't seem like it's been around for very long. I would guess 5 years or less.
Tim, I'll ask Christina Marsh, because she'll know, and I'll get back with you on that one. But I think it's within the last, 8 years, maybe not even that long.
Yes.
But,
okay.
It's a
But
great.
they're awesome. I haven't actually seen a life coach. I've seen a lot of field ministers. I haven't seen the life coaches yet, but I've heard about the program that inmates get sent to for the training to be a life coach. I would have loved to have gone to that program, but by the time they started implementing it, I just didn't have enough time left at that point. Yeah. But
yeah.
But absolutely, they seem amazing. They do a really good job, and I respect those
and I
men.
think that every dorm needs to have, this is just my opinion, every dorm should have at least 2 suicide prevention team members, because who knows, there are people around them better than the ones that live with you. You know their behaviors. You know when something is off about them. And you're right there if something happens. They need to be completely trained in suicide prevention, because it is scientifically proven that it takes an 8-minute conversation usually to stop somebody from killing themselves, just by simple conversation.
Yes. Yeah, to let them know that somebody cares, that somebody sees them. Like, I see you.
So a lot of it's just deflecting thoughts, and if you have to call for a ranking officer that's, on the other side of a unit, sometimes that's too long.
It's too long. They may take an hour or 3 before they even show up. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then a lot of them have a really bad or calloused attitude, and they just really don't care. I'll get there when I get there.
Like it's a hassle. It's looked at like it's a hassle. They don't want to deal with it. But yet,
I'll never forget while I was in SEG on the French Robertson unit, a matter of fact, the suicide that I mentioned earlier, the guy that got, literally drug out of his cell in a pool of blood, he ended up cutting the artery in his arm right here, the vein. He cut that vein, and he had like filled up a milk carton. Back then they passed out little cartons of milk, and they filled up a milk carton with blood, and he tried to dash the officer with it, and they gassed him down and all that. And he bled out, he bled out from that vein, which is a small artery. And, but what I'll never forget is before all that happened, the guy that started cutting on himself before he got that serious, and the officer that was working the run, I doubt he works there anymore, but, the guy, he was telling him, do it, mother effer. You got that nah, if you don't do it. And he was egging him on, like literally egging him on, daring him to do it. And then he burn off. The officer, he walks off, and he comes back like 30 minutes later, and there's blood all over the cell. And when all that other stuff happened, man, and when the guy had a milk carton full of blood, and they gassed him, and when they drug his body out of there in a puddle of blood, that same officer, he looked like he was about to have a heart attack. He was pouring sweat. He was pale. He was shaky. Like, man, dude, you kind of caused a lot of this, man. You egged this on. You aggravated this situation dramatically, and now you're having this type of reaction. What did you think was going to happen?
Right.
Whew, I ain't thought about that in a long time. Yeah.
It's rough. Yeah. The mental health system is, it's a doozy. Addictions and mental health is probably, well, I mean, it's my number one thing that I have a problem with personally. So
sure. Yeah. It's definitely an issue, man. It's just solutions are hard to come by. There's ideas. What you say about a suicide prevention person on each wing, I haven't even heard of such for the inmate population. Do they train suicide prevention inmates?
I've been told that they're starting to, that some units do have them. I don't know if it's confirmed to be true. So evidently, if it is, it's a small program so far, but they need to do this.
If nothing else, they should at least have a field minister, maybe at least one
in every dorm
on every wing, because they live in there. They know everybody. They know who's the addicts are, who the victims are, who the victimizers are. They're going to be privy to all that.
I'm saying that they know their people better than any officer does. It's there every other day or not around, and they live amongst them, so they can tell.
And inmates are a lot more comfortable speaking to another inmate than speaking to an authority figure, because that's another conditioning problem in prison. You get the authority complex where, anybody or anything that represents authority, you have this tendency to rebel against it or to have a very bad or negative attitude towards it. Right.
Well, and a lot of, I know a lot of on the bigger units, like Tim had said a while ago, a lot of men look at it as it's not their problem to deal with. Like, oh, you're suicidal. I don't know nothing about it. I'm walking away from you. That's your big deal, instead of actually taking the time to sit and talk to somebody. But I think that mentality has changed a lot in the last couple of years.
Well, I'd speak about the conditioning amongst the inmate population. At the same time, there's a lot of conditioning that takes place amongst the officer corps also. I've seen many officers in TDCJ that are more institutionalized than inmates are. Like, seriously, as crazy as that sounds, I'm absolutely 100% serious. And, one of those things in that complex is they don't want to get viewed as being inmate friendly. They get, they try to help somebody, and their coworkers and especially their rank will kind of ride down on them. They'll berate them and belittle them, for being inmate friendly and, caring about these convicts or whatever the case may be. And then they start questioning them like, "Are you got some kind of personal relationship going on with this guy or that guy? Or are you bringing in contraband?" And, and then it just makes it hard on the officer. For the few that do care, that would like to help, it makes it hard on them to do so. Like they almost get punished for helping somebody. What kind of environment is that?
That's kind of against the mission statement, if you ask me.
Most of them don't even know the mission statement. They couldn't tell you what the mission statement was.
That's true. Wow.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I guess fast forward to what else you got for me tonight?
If we're ready to segue into a different topic, I'd like to speak a little bit on my transition and the experience that I've had coming out of prison after doing 25 consecutive years, going in at 18 years old, being released at 42 years old, and just re-entering society, this modern day world. And what a trip that it's been. I'm only like 23 days out today. That's it. I haven't even been out a month yet. Right. And I suspect that I've had it a little bit easier than most people, especially most people that do as long as I do. On the one hand, I don't have no family left. I'm an only child, and, all my parents and grandparents all died while I was in the system. So I've been on my own pretty much since about 2003. So when I walked out of those prison doors I didn't own anything in the entire world except for the single set of clothes I was wearing on my back. I literally, day one, step one, ground zero. So it was difficult. I wasn't scared to get out of prison. A lot of people that do a lot of time, they're kind of scared to get out because it's so new and they don't know anything about it. And all they know is this life on the inside. I wasn't really like that. I was more excited when I think about that. I'm excited, because I love new things, and there's so many things in life that I've just never experienced yet. And I crave just life experiences. That's what I hunger for more than anything. I believe those are the truest treasures in life, are your experiences, not your material things and whatnot. They can ease your way and make things a little comfortable here and there. But, the only thing that you may get to take with you when it's all over, perhaps, is your experiences. So those are like the real treasures in life. And like I said, I went in as a kid, and there's so many things I've never done yet. So I get out of prison. Oh man. Unfortunately, I might as well open this can of worms. I got out of prison, and I was going to a friend's house of mine, a buddy that I knew. He let me parole to his house. But before I got out, his phone got disconnected, and I hadn't spoken to him in like 6 or 7 weeks. But his address was approved, and they paroled me out. They put a leg monitor on me, a GPS monitor, and they told me, go straight to your approved address and do not stop anywhere, between here and there. They released me in Houston, and my address was way up here in Dallas. Right. So, that's a 6-hour drive. I had a different buddy come and pick me up. He drove 5.5 hours from Fort Worth to come get me. and he come and picked me up, drove me all the way back to Dallas. But he told me when he picked me up, he handed me a cell phone, and
that you didn't know how to use.
yeah, I had to tell him, hey, bro, how do I turn it on? I'm serious. I didn't even know how to turn it on. And I'm literally I'm like a brand new little bitty baby out here. I'm like a caveman stepping out of the cave into modern day society. It's like meet George Jetson, okay? But be that as it may, I'll get to that in a little bit. I come out of prison and he tells me, look, dude, that address is no longer good, man. That house belonged to his mother, and his mother sold that house out from under him. The dude is like literally living out of his car right now. So I'm like, what? Like, okay, now I got a problem. I'm supposed to go straight to this address and nobody lives there. It's either an abandoned house or maybe somebody else lives there by now. I have no idea. But the only phone number that I have at this point in time is the phone number for the main parole office in Dallas, in the area of Dallas I was going to, which was Garland. It was the Garland office, and it's the front desk. It's not a specific PO. So on the drive between Houston and Dallas, I call this office 7 times, and all I get is voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. And I'm like, oh my God. So I leave several recorded messages on voicemails, different voicemails, telling them, man, this is who I am. This is what's going on. I just got released and I don't know what to do. I don't want to get in no trouble, but I don't know what to do. And
Lynchner wasn't taking you back. You couldn't just walk back in prison.
I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't going to do that anyway. But
no.
But so I leave these messages and I tell them on the message machine that, look, I don't know what else to do. So as of right now, I've paid for a legitimate sober living house out of my own pocket. It cost me $1,500 that I really didn't have. This is money I saved up to try to start a life on the outside. But I paid $1,500 for 1 month of rent at this sober living house. And I spend the night there. I get there about 6 o'clock. I spend the night, and I'm supposed to report to parole by 9 a.m. the next morning. I hire an Uber car to come pick me up and take me, and I get there at 8:30. I sign in at the front desk, and I sit in the lobby for about 2 hours. Nobody ever speaks to me, never says a word to me the entire time. They finally open the door, and they call my name. Marshall. Okay, we got a bingo. Let's go. I'm ready. Let's get this. I'm excited, right? And I go back there to the back, and I step into the back, and there's 3 cops standing there waiting to arrest me. Put your hands behind your back. And they were aggressive. Like I don't know if they were expecting me to resist or what, but they were like, I had to tell them, like, look, man, I'm not resisting. Calm down. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. But yeah, man, it was crazy. And nobody ever spoke to me. No, what happened? Why didn't you go here? Nothing about the recordings I left on voicemail, nothing. They never said a word. They just arrested me. I've been out of prison 23 hours at this point, not even 1 day. They released me on November the 12th, and on November the 13th, I reported to the parole office, and they arrested me. After 25 years of consecutive confinement in prison, I spent my first month out of prison in Dallas County Jail. Can you even begin to imagine how devastating that was? I'm talking about, man, that came closer to breaking me than it probably almost anything in my entire 25 years in prison. It was, man, I was in shell shock. I did not see that coming because I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I did everything that I could do. I didn't know anything else to do. If there was something else I could have done, I would have done it. I didn't know anything else to do. Man, that was hard. But I got a hearing, and they reinstated me, of course, which was kind of a no-brainer. And they released me on December the 16th. And I've been out since then. I'm living here in Fort Worth. I got a job with one of my buddies, got me hired on. I'm doing maintenance work on industrial facilities. I started my job on my 8th day out of prison. So I work almost every single day. And just transitioning though, and technology has been really, really hard for me, and I'm luckily I'm kind of smart, so I catch on fairly quick, but I need somebody to show me, and it's kind of embarrassing for me to ask, such simple questions like, hey, what does this symbol right here mean? And what does this do? And how do I do this? And how do I make a music playlist? How do I do Facebook? How do I create a profile? I mean, everything, every step of the way. I don't know any of it. It's all brand new to me. And like I said, certain people that I trust in my life, Ashlyn, she helps me out a lot. Certain people I don't mind asking because I know they understand. But I don't know if it's pride or what that would prevent me from asking just anybody. It's kind of embarrassing, to tell you the truth. But, I'm learning. I'm learning every day. I'm driven. I'm driven to learn as quick as I can, without trying to rush myself. And my first week out of prison, like every day, sometime during the course of the day, I would get waves of anxiety, because my mind is constantly racing. Like, man, what do I need to do? And in what order do I need to be doing it? How do I prioritize? Because I mean, this is my chance at life. I'm just starting life at 42 years old. I don't have time for games. I don't have time for a lot of anything that ain't very serious, to tell you the truth. That doesn't mean I'm going to be 100% serious all the time. I get it. Everybody likes to and needs to relax. But at the same time, I'm far behind, and I don't know. I'm not trying to catch up. There ain't no such thing as catching up or making up for lost time, but at the same time, man, I've never got anxiety before in my life. And for that first week, man, it would hit me hard, and it would like I would have to.
I told you every day, just chill and be still. It'll be all right.
I had to take deep breaths and kind of calm myself. Like, okay, slow down, man. Like, I ended up doing more thinking than actually doing. Like, I'm overthinking stuff so much that it's actually preventing me from actually doing anything, right? And I was like, okay, and I don't know. I would make a list. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the order that I'm going to do it in. And
yeah,
and, slowly but surely that's eased up, because, like I said, I never had anxiety in my life before, and I still get it a little bit, but nothing like that first week. That first week was kind of intense, like intense waves of it. But I still, at this point in time, I don't really go nowhere. I go from work to home. I've been to Walmart and the dollar stores a few times. My one and only leisure outing is that I went to the Dallas Mavericks game on Christmas Day. That was a new experience for us, and, never did that before. So I enjoyed it. That was pretty amazing. But that's really the only leisure activity I've done since I've been out. Everything is just work and home. And, for the time being, that doesn't really bother me, but I do I'm aware that I probably need to be careful to guard against just sequestering myself in my room too much or something like that. At some point I'm going to need to start getting out more. Right now, though, it's just a little bit difficult because, like I said, I'm on a GPS leg monitor, and anywhere that I want to go, I have to get it pre-approved by my parole officer. If I want to go to the gas station, I need to write down the address. I got to Google it and write down the address to the gas station, send it to my PO, and ask for approval, before I leave the house.
You want to tell people about these nice little monitors and how they like to go off on their own sometimes and freak you out the first couple times?
It's happened at least once already. And yeah, it does it makes me nervous, because like I said, they've already arrested me once for nothing.
Right.
So it makes me nervous.
And charge them, the guys, because they'll call you at 5 o'clock in the morning if it's dying and tell you to plug it in.
That happened also. Yeah. They called me at 5 o'clock in the morning and they're like, is this Shannon Marshall? I'm like, yes. This is the control center. You need to charge your monitor. It's like, wow. And it was actually plugged up. I had the charger plugged up, but the plug in the wall had come loose and it wasn't getting electricity. So I was like,
but
okay.
Yet they wouldn't call you and they thought that you absconded.
Yes.
You got to call it. Isn't that crazy?
Yes. Right. you need to charge your monitor. It's like, okay, whatever you say. I'm sorry. it's
Right.
it's your world. I'm just trying to survive in it, right? Yeah.
So,
Yes.
what advice do you have for people that have been in for so long? Like, what's been the hardest thing, I think, for you? Like, if you could build a program for reentry right now, what would you build?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. First and foremost, people need to be schooled in the usage of cell phones, because it's not just a phone, right? For oftentimes people, a large portion of your entire life is tied up in that phone, you know, and they'll show in prison, they'll show you pictures of a phone and tell you, this, that, and the other about it, but you're not learning nothing like that. They need to actually have, just like they put people in changes classes whenever they're getting ready to parole out. Changes, it teaches it's a life skills class. Part of changes class should be, they should have cell phones in there, whether they might not be connected to the outside or however they would do the security part of it, but they should have phones in there that they can actually, you can learn on and learn how to access this, that, and the other, how to go to your Google Play Store and install different apps that you're going to use onto your phone screen and stuff like that. I didn't know none of that.
Well, I mean, they do have model cell phones that these like Verizon and all those companies have that are strictly dummy phones just for displays that don't link up to anything.
Yeah,
but
something like that.
It could totally be done.
Yeah, something like that would work. But that's going to be a big one, because when my friend handed me a cell phone, I literally did not know how to turn it on. Like, not even joking.
So the tablets have absolutely nothing to do with learning how to do. I mean, if you didn't have a
very
tablet,
little.
it's even more difficult.
Yes. The tablet is a step in the right direction, but it's very, very limited. You don't have to go and install apps. Whatever you have access to is already on there. You just tap on the icon and access it. And it's not very interactive. You're either accessing, your writing part, your e-messages, your music, or podcasts or something like that. It's not very much to it. It's very elementary, but it is something though. Yeah.
You see what Lennon said? At least we know you never had a contraband phone inside.
No, I didn't. I was scared of them. I was scared of them. I seen people, man, they give a minimum. They start out at 4 years. You get busted with a cell phone in there, you're starting out at 4 years minimum.
Try 35. Try 35 now.
Oh, it can go up from there, but I'm saying that's the minimum.
It just happened. 35.
Somebody got 35 years for a
35 phone? 35 years.
Woo. I don't even know how that's possible. Yeah.
Happened.
Yeah. Yes. But I don't know. That's the other thing. I told y'all that there was only like one or two things that I was scared of, in prison. And one of them was becoming institutionalized. And the second one was, getting extra time tacked on top of my 35 year sentence I already had, and unfortunately that actually happened. But so one of those came to pass. Thankfully the other one I kind of fended off for the most part. Yeah.
So do you recommend parole attorneys? Are they worth the money?
Actually, that's interesting, because I have my own perspective on parole attorneys, and I did actually have one. On my 35-year sentence, my first time I came up for parole, I got a 3-year set off. When I finished that 3-year set off, they gave me a 2-year set off. So in all likelihood, I'm going to get a 1-year set off after this at the very least, right? Probably an 85% chance. But during that 2-year set off, a friend of mine, I could have never afforded it on my own, but a friend of mine happened to be flush and was doing good at the time. And they're like, man, we need to get you out of there, bro. You've been in too long, man. And I was like, man, I've done everything. I've tried everything. I took every class that they have. I have every certificate that they offer pretty much. I don't know what else I could do, and the only other thing I know of is maybe a parole attorney, and I can't afford one. And he asked me, well, what do they cost? And man, they start out around $2,000, $2,500. That's pretty much the cheapest you're ever going to find one, more or less. And they just shoot up from there.
Right.
This is the thing, though. this is my own personal opinion, but I'll give you the logic behind it. If you're thinking about hiring a parole attorney for your loved one, find out where their voters are stationed at. Whatever region that they're in, where are the people that are the 3 people that are going to vote on them for parole? Where are they at? Like personally, my 3 people at that point in time were located in Austin. They were on the Austin parole board. So I hired a lawyer that had spent his entire career in Austin,
Right.
because, however good their legal expertise is almost beside the point. Regardless of how good the lawyer is, these parole board commissioners and members, they're not going to read much. They just have too much to do. I mean, they say the average person gets like 30 seconds to a minute and a half or something review, and that's like really, and they broke it down. If they review this many people a day, then that breaks down to like less than 2 minutes a piece, right? So that being the case, I don't care who the lawyer is, they're not going to do a whole lot of reading. So it doesn't matter how fancy that parole packet looks, okay? On the flip side, and this is my mindset, of course, I would rather pay for a lawyer that lives in the area that I'm going to get voted on, that actually knows these voters, that has a personal relationship with these voters, that talks to them, in person, whether it be on the phone or in person, right?
Right.
Pay for the relationship, because however it works, whether they scratch each other's backs or whatever's going on, that's what I would rather pay for. Somebody that can speak to these people directly and, well, hey man, I got this guy and this guy coming up, and I'd really appreciate it if you take a serious look at these 2, or whatever the case may be. It just seems like your odds are a lot better, if you pay for
like
somebody.
In all reality, there's no difference between pre-conviction and post-conviction when it comes to hiring an attorney and who they work with, because we all know that criminal defense attorneys, they win their cases, or they get the best sentences based on their relationship.
They bargain with the DA.
Same thing.
Yep. They give and take. It's a bargaining deal, and it's the same thing. Yes. So like I said, you want to pay for somebody who has a personal relationship with whoever your loved one's voters are going to be. That's going to do you the most justice, give you the best odds.
Can you explain to Lau how what board you're going to? Isn't it done by region?
Yes, it's separated by region, but like I don't know all the regions or anything like that, but it's easy enough to find out. Your loved one can write an I-60 to the unit parole representative, who, if y'all don't know, they have a unit parole representative on each unit, but they're literally like the lowest rung on the totem pole, lowest rung on the ladder. They don't really know anything. They're an entry level parole employee. They don't have a lot of answers. They can't answer very many questions. They're very, very limited in whatever knowledge they have, but they can tell you, on the unit, where you're stationed at, where your parole voters are stationed at, who they're going to be. These 3 people are based in San Antonio. These people are in Austin, so on and so forth around the state. That's not very hard to find out. So,
well, like, for example, I mean, like you were at Torres. Okay. So if you would have been paroling out of Torres, it would have probably been the
San Antonio.
Well, actually,
No?
Beeville.
Well, it's a little tricky, because they tell you Beeville is what they call the IPO office.
Right.
They tell you that anything that you want to send, documents that you want to send to parole, send it to Beeville. And
Right.
Beeville, that doesn't mean those parole people are in Beeville. Beeville is just like a hub center, and
Gotcha.
they'll repackage that, and they will send it on to wherever them people are actually stationed at. Because even though my voters were in Austin, my IPO was in Beeville also. They told me any documents that I wanted to send into parole, send them to Beeville. But my voters were in Austin. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Totally. Parole packets, are they worth it?
Ultimately kind of not, because like I said, they're not really going to read it, but you still need to do it, because it's on you It's on you to do everything that is within your power to do to help yourself and to give yourself the best odds and chances. Okay. So you want to do it anyway. Saying just don't expect them to really read it a whole lot. If anything, it's good to include a lot of pictures. Take a picture of this is the house I'm going to be living at. If they have a vehicle ready, this is the vehicle that's waiting on me so I can get to work. If you have employment waiting on you, this is a picture of where I'll be working at. They might actually look at some pictures. This is a picture of my family and my loved ones, my children who are waiting on me. Those might have more impact. It just, like I said, just don't expect them to spend much time reading what you're actually writing, but you still need to do it. You still need to do it because you need to have all your boxes checked. Don't ever let it be because of something that you did or did not do. You can only take care of your own business. You can't take care of nobody else's business for them, but it's on you to take care of yours.
And yes, I would send a copy to Austin and to the regional IPO office because that's what I've done for people so far, because I don't trust the IPO to send it to Austin. I just rather do it myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Redundancy can be your friend. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else for us?
I think I'm pretty good tonight. I enjoy it, cover a few topics at a time. There's still a lot of stories to come, things I've experienced along the way, lessons I've learned, amongst other things. I taught a class while I was on the inside. I was a facilitator, and for a little over 13 years, I taught other men primarily self-help, self-betterment, evolution and development, and, I've learned a lot of lessons. There's advantages to adversity, and, that a lot of that stuff I like to get into just a little at a time. I see we're already running over an hour. It doesn't even seem like it. Seems like about 30 minutes have gone by, but
Well, with that last question, are you open or opposed to mentoring men inside?
I would love to. I just wonder what the format would be. How would I have access?
Right. We'll have to figure that out.
But absolutely. Like I said, it's something I'm already used to. Like I said, I taught men and mentored men for over 13 years. And without tooting my own horn, it's one of the few things that I have at this point in my life so far that I can be honestly or righteously proud of, is that of the men I mentored, from what I know, at least 85% of them, they get out and they stay out of prison.
Well,
and
Tammy
that's
asked,
big.
Tammy's asking, did being a mentor help you heal?
Absolutely. It made me discover a passion for actually helping others. I love to help others, and sometimes it's difficult. I know I've been difficult for other people to help at times in my life, but my experience on the inside, whenever I was in GP, whenever it wasn't an actual class that people voluntarily came to, in GP, man, I guesstimate something like maybe 1 in 40 men that I met were just at a time and a place in their life where they were actually ready to change, for something different, for something to change, to move on to another stage in their life or something like that. And they would open their mind to possibilities and options, and it can be disheartening for so many people to not be ready and to be stuck in, one phase of their life, whether it be glamorizing an outlaw lifestyle or a gangster lifestyle, or whether it be caught up and tied down in addiction, and so many people, man, they want to impress other people. It's like their sense of self-esteem or self-worth is dependent on what other people think of them. And at some point you just have to get over that. Your opinion of yourself has to start mattering more to you than what the opinion of these other men, who, once you get shipped to a different unit or you get out of prison, the odds are you're never going to see these people again for the rest of your life. So why invest so much time and effort and cause yourself so much pain and struggle to impress these guys or to gain their approval. It's not logical at all. But like I said, logic doesn't get used a whole lot. It doesn't go very far quite often.
Very good. All right. Well, guys, like I said, with the weather going on for the next 24, 48 hours, please let me or Tanya or Bella know what's going on, because we're on it, y'all. We're trying. Just give us some time. Give them time. I have got to get some sleep sometime this week.
Please.
It's been absolutely insane. But I couldn't do without you guys. I love you guys. Yeah, we'll be back next Thursday at 7:00 every week from now on. We're not going anywhere.
I look forward to it. Thank you all so much for accepting me. This is an amazing community. I hope to help out and provide as much insight as I possibly can. Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.